Sweet. We're live. We did it. What's up, everyone?
Good afternoon, Mr. Carter.
What's up, Brian?
How you
Yes.
doing, buddy?
Man, I'm doing good. I got no complaints whatsoever.
Oh,
Doing
that's
amazing.
it's a great way to be, my friend.
How about yourself?
No complaints here at all. Never do.
Cool.
We just know solutions here.
Yeah.
Yeah, right on.
So, I'm wondering, I was just thinking about this a couple minutes ago before we hopped on here. Oh, for anybody watching, welcome to the Mind Design Podcast, episode 4. Um, if you haven't seen any of the other episodes, kind of like what we like to do is just have this be like a free flow conversation, but we always end up talking about consciousness, the mind, reality, stuff like that.
Mm.
Um, and so, but anyways, there it is. There's the intro. If you like
I
stuff
love
like
it,
that,
Ron.
subscribe.
Anything and everything we talk about. And here's the thing. Comment. We'll talk about anything you want. Just leave comments, whatever it is. It all works.
Yeah. Um, so what do you think about this, Brian? Um, I was thinking about what I notice happens whenever I like set goals in my life. Like there tends to be like a pattern that I see. Like even when I just mentally set a goal, but before I like share what I was thinking, I just want to get like your take. Have you noticed a pattern when it comes to that? In your because I know you've set some goals, you've accomplished some goals, right? So, but I'm sure you've also set some goals and then not accomplished them. But have you noticed like any sort of pattern in there, or no? Am I just like way off and it's just a weird thing that I see?
Um, you know, I guess the only pattern I see is when I'm hitting my goal. When I'm hitting the goals that I visualized, right? Because first I visualize what I want, and then I just do it in reverse until I get to where I want to be. So goals that I don't hit, let's just talk about that, right, for a second,
Okay.
and maybe
Yeah.
I can, maybe I can come up with a pattern that you're looking for. Um, so I gained a little bit of weight over the pandemic, not just all muscle; it is a little bit of fat, right? So I know I need to eat better, right? I know that for a fact. I need to eat better. So to get to a certain weight that I want to be, for surfing or whatever sport I'm playing, here's the challenge, right? So now you've got a lot of things going on. You're working pretty hard. You're working a lot. You've got relationships to maintain. You've got friendships you have to maintain. You have podcasts to do. You're working on all kinds of things, um, businesses and stuff like that. So what happens? You forget to prep your dinner the night before. So what happens? You're buying a cheesesteak, and so is that a pattern? Probably not. Pattern of success would be always prepping, always being on top of it. So to get out of the pattern, what do? You go get pizza, you go get whatever, So, on nutrition goals, that's a nutrition goal, but like other goals you can reach easily if you just do them in reverse. For me it always has been like that.
I think that it's really interesting that that's what you shared because this is the pattern that I've seen in myself at least towards any goal is I set the goal and I start trying to like reverse engineer it
Mm,
and the bigger the goal the more this happens, right? um so the further away the goal is from where I'm at right now, I start reverse engineering all the steps, and then I get to the step that like I need to be doing right now, and I start doing it, and what I've noticed is that like the sequence that I think the path is going to go down to get me to my goal when it's further out is usually wrong. And so like, but I don't know this. I think that it's right. And so it's like I start taking action towards it, take action towards it, take action towards it. and then like something pops up, or there becomes like some moment in time where I have to be like aware. I have to where it feels like I'm like for like it feels like I have two decisions to make, and both of them go in the direction of my goal, right? Or at least I think that they do. Um, they're not going away from it, but they're both going towards it in some way, shape, or form. And one is better than the other. And
Mm,
it's like I have to like I notice that I have to be in this state of openness. It's almost like the universe is nudging me, where it's like, hey, you're close, but let's readjust you over here this way a little bit. And a lot of times I don't want that readjustment because I become really fixated on the path that I carved out of like this is how the goal will happen. And
right. That's
and
interesting. So,
it's
in other words, you feel like, wait a minute, the path that I picked is the only path. It's the correct path, and that's the path I have to stay on.
right.
But then the universe is tweaking you a little bit, and it says, "Oh no, that's not this path is the right path."
Yeah.
And until
Yeah.
you get to where you want to go and you look back, you say, "Oh my god, thank God that happened."
Exactly. Like every time.
Every time. It's weird, but it's like every time either there's a lesson that you learned through the process. Well, there's always lessons you learn, but a specific lesson you learned, and then when you look back, say, "Oh my God, thank God that happened."
A specific lesson, usually that's vital, that a lesson that I'm going to need to get to the goal. Where it's like without
Yep.
that lesson, like it's a lesson that I harvest from this experience, but then I also use that lesson to get to the goal. And it's like I can see how I needed that to happen to be able to do XYZ. Um,
Mm.
a great example, and I bring this up like a lot, but it's just like my experience is when I first started, trying to build businesses online, and I say it that way because that's what I was doing then. I was trying, right? Um, and
Yeah.
and So I say it like that on purpose. If anybody's like, "Oh, he's saying the try word," it's like that's literally what I was doing. I wasn't building business. I was trying to then, but
Yeah.
I wasn't sober, and I didn't want to do any personal development. All this stuff that we talk about here, I didn't want to do any of that. I was like, that's some airy fairy weirdo stuff. I just show me what to do, and
Yeah. Yeah.
and
So you're like, it can't be me. I'm not the problem why this isn't
definitely not.
succeeding.
Right, definitely,
Yeah.
it's me and everything I do and how I do it, that's all perfect. Just show me what to do and I'll be there. And and the universe kept like nudging me in this area of like, all right, you got to get sober. You got to stop doing drugs and alcohol. And I wouldn't listen to it, right? I'd be like, no, like I don't need to do that. That's and the weird thing is like once I really started being like hyper focused on like my goal for like business growth, and and the more focused I got on the goal, it was almost like it was almost like the universe became louder and louder about how it needed me to do this other thing that to me at the time seemed totally unrelated. And um and what I mean by that is like I eventually my addiction issues got I ended up creating problems where I got let go of the sales team that I was running, and then couldn't pay my rent in LA, had to move out of my place in LA, had to go move in with my younger brother, on a spare
Wow. So,
mattress.
Ron, you got fired. You got
Hmm.
fired from that job.
Well, I mean, I got let go because I stopped showing up. You know,
Yeah. Yeah. I
picture
just didn't
this.
show up.
Yeah,
That's
picture
you know,
this. You run the sales team meeting. So
yeah.
you and the other sales rep that you're training and you're in charge of making sure they're doing what you need to do. You scheduled the meeting,
Yeah.
and then you don't show up to it for like 3 days in a row.
That's awesome. Hey, and then you give a speech. I thought you were good enough. It was a test. That's awesome.
So that's what happened
Uh,
there, right? And but it put
Hey,
me
Rod, since
because
we're
of all
talking,
this. Real quick, hold that thought,
since we're
and I'll
okay.
I'll wrap this up, right? Because I'm really long winded, but I'm getting to the point that I was trying to make. Because of all that stuff, it forced me to be in this really painful situation where it was like I have no option now but to like get sober, and it wasn't to get any of that stuff back. It was just because like my life had just gotten so small, it was reduced to like you're either going to suffer and be in this addiction like hell or like get sober. And then I
Yeah,
did, and then I started doing business stuff again a year later. I just focused on sobriety for a while, and then like stuff started working like immediately. I wasn't trying anymore, I was just doing. And it was like, oh, and I could look back on it now and be like, that whole process like helped turn me into the person that I needed to become to do this stuff anyways. It's like no wonder the universe is like nudging me in this direction, and when I wouldn't listen, it shoved me. you know?
yeah. Well, I think not only that, but you're a good communicator, right? So now think of that ripple effect that you're having on all these people you're helping. Pretty amazing shit.
Yeah,
But I was going to ask you, so you're getting pretty banged up on alcohol, right? You're pretty drunk. Do you ever try to strain yourself out with like cocaine?
dude, I did pretty much every drug that's out there.
Yeah.
Like
So,
the end of my addiction, I was like towards the end when it got really bad, I was doing heroin, um, pretty much everything, but I was dependent like on heroin. I needed it like every day to feel okay. And
yeah.
so and when I had started doing online business stuff before, I wasn't doing that then, but like also um like what ended up happening is I just didn't have recovery. I didn't have a connection with something greater than myself. Where I felt like uh so I was really like self-centered and self-absorbed, and that caused just a lot of pain because I'm just
Hmm.
thinking about how everything affects me and not other people. And then I needed to medicate that instead of it's like putting a band-aid on cancer. Instead of just getting the chemo and getting it removed, I was like putting the
Yikes.
band-aid on it. And the band-aid was um this terrible solution, but that seemed to work at the time. It worked until it didn't. And but but yeah, that's like we can go down a whole rabbit hole with that. I think we did on like episode 2. Um so if any of you guys want to hear
Oh,
me
we,
talk more in depth about that, it's on here on the YouTubes, on the internet, on the interwebs somewhere. You can find it.
yeah, yeah. Go back in time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know people who they would get totally banged up on alcohol, then they need to get straightened out. So they do a few lines and then they get straightened right out from that. Or they thought they did anyway,
Yeah, that's the thing.
Pretty
They thought they
pretty
did.
weird. Yeah. Uh,
Yeah. It's nothing like the mental clarity that I have now. It's like, yeah, okay, I do hit my vape. I have it in my hand right now.
hmm,
It's tobacco, it's not a weed pen for anybody
yeah.
watching. It's
Ron's last
nicotine.
addiction. His
Yeah.
last
It's
addiction.
literally nicotine and caffeine. Like that's it.
Nicotine and
But
caffeine.
also this is my justification for it.
Oh,
Like
it's the
I
reason.
don't feel here's the reason why it's okay, right?
Yeah,
It's because I compare it like, okay, well, like 3 years ago, dude, you were like doing heroin and all kinds of other crazy stuff like on a daily basis, and now you just have nicotine and caffeine. And sooner or
yeah,
later I'll be tired of that, and then I'll get rid of that. But for right now, I can remember what stuff was like just 3 years ago, and this is way healthy. It's moving in the right direction. But that's also a great example of like, um,
well, let me ask you something real quick.
what's up?
Is it still a crutch? Is the vape still a crutch for you?
Yeah, I'm starting to notice it. I'm
All
starting to
right.
notice it. But also, like, keep in mind that when I was doing all those drugs and everything, I was smoking like a pack of cigarettes a day. And
Wow.
so I noticed that way more. It took me on like I don't smoke cigarettes anymore, right? But it took me like a year and a half of only hitting my vape. At first, when I went from cigarettes to vape, it actually felt like progress in the right direction because my lungs actually cleared up a little bit compared to how much I was smoking cigarettes before, you know. Um, but now I'm starting
Hmm.
to notice like, okay, if I hit this too much, I'll like have trouble breathing when I shouldn't when I'm
Really?
just sitting around. And I'm like, okay, that's not normal. So like it's starting to go into my mind like this has got to go like sooner or later. And that's how this process always works for me. I'm hard-headed when it comes to like goals and stuff. I'm like I just told you the story about me getting sober. Universe is like, you should do it. And I'm like, yeah, but not right now. And I'm like, yeah, but not right now. Then I'm like, all right, now I have to. And then I do it. Right.
Yeah.
That's how things tend to go for me with growth. And that's okay. I'm aware of that. And, and
Yeah.
so
I mean, if I show up on your doorstep and outrun you or, you know, outsurf you, outrun you, outskateboard you, you name it, it'd be pretty embarrassing. I think that would be the point where you'd say, I gotta quit.
yeah, I mean maybe. I don't know. I don't think that we all maybe it probably would be if you were me, you know? Um,
Maybe.
because
Yeah,
we
maybe
all
you would
have our
give a
different
shit.
things. Like for me, what I notice is like the things that motivate me the most are usually things that have nothing to do with what anybody else can see. Which is
Hmm.
and so what I mean is like the things that motivate me the most are it's internal. Like what motivates me more than that is the fact that the other night when I was trying to hit my vape, it was making me cough and I felt like I was wheezing a little bit. And I
Hmm.
was like, I don't like that. No one's
Yeah.
around. I'm just at my house. No one even has to know about that. Of course, I just told the whole world. But right, but
Yeah.
like that's the stuff that
Yeah.
like what got me to get sober. It wasn't nobody knew that I was going through those issues. I wasn't vocal about it when that happened. I disappeared from the internet when I started using harder drugs again because I didn't want anybody to know. But my pain and suffering from my situation was so intense just internally and it felt like it was just really personal because like I'm not even sharing it with anybody that I was like, all right, I have to do something about it. Even my family members, they didn't really know. I told my mom and dad that I was going to rehab again the night before I was leaving because I had to explain to them like why like where'd Ron just up and go to. You know, they lived right down the road and I'm just gonna disappear. So I told
Did
them
did they know, Ron, that you had a problem?
they knew before because I went into treatment like years before, but they thought that I had like fixed it, I guess. Um,
Mm.
and so yeah, because my dad's response was like, I thought you already like I thought you already like basically I thought you already fixed that. You know, like I didn't know that
Yeah.
that was and I was like and so I had to explain. I was like, yeah, like look, I half lied. I was like, yeah, I've just been like smoking weed a lot. It's out of control. Like, I gotta just do this and be like fully sober. And I didn't tell
Hmm.
him everything that I was doing. Again, I didn't want to like cause any unnecessary damage.
Yeah,
But
yeah. Well, it's like the truth is I lied.
yeah.
We simplify things.
Yeah.
Yeah. With me, I guess like when it comes to thinking of addiction, right? So I just don't want anything to control me. And like with caffeine, um, I was drinking tons of it. I guess from the outside, I didn't realize I was, but everyone was like, "Oh, you drink so much coffee, right?" So then the coffee had control over me, and I just don't want anything to have control over me.
Mhm.
You know,
Where do you think that comes from?
even the government, but we don't want to get into that. We don't want
Where
to
do you,
open up that can of worms.
where do you think that comes from for you?
Um, Not wanting to be controlled
Yeah. Like
by a
what?
substance, we'll say by a substance.
Like well, you said something that's like a very strong like identity type statement. Twice, you said it twice. You said, "I just don't
Mm,
want anything to control me. Don't want anything to control me." So I'm just,
mm.
where do you feel like that comes from for you?
Well, that's a great question, Ron. I never even looked that deep into it, but I forget I'm talking to Ron Carter here, who's gonna go deep. I don't know. I think just the idea that somebody's either making a drug, alcohol, coffee, whatever it is, right? Right? And they're trying to hook you, right? So they sell more of it. Just knowing that someone's trying to rope me into their profits or whatever it is. I don't know. I don't know what drives me like that, but I just don't want to be controlled that way.
Mm. I get that, and it's something that's kind of really similar to like there's a lot of things that do that. Um, I want to ask you a question real quick,
Mm.
just based off of what you just shared, right? Um, if it's okay with you, I want to get your
Well, let's hear
permission
the
before
question.
I ask.
Yeah, go
Yeah,
ahead.
give me the
Let's.
question, then I'll tell you if it's okay.
Yeah. So what if we're
um,
alive?
so like, dang, I forgot what I was even gonna say now. It's okay, we don't have to do it.
Cool.
Um,
Hey, hey, what was that song? It used to say, "Oh, I must have got high. I must have got high."
yeah.
I had a
Um,
question on the podcast, but I forgot. I must have got high.
no, but I was asking you that stuff because I was like, I found it really interesting because that's a part of like whenever I hear anybody say anything that's like, I just don't like this, or I just like this, period. It's like
Mm,
that's always interesting because to me, like what that's an indicator of to me is like somehow this statement or this thing is like a part of this person's identity. And and as we both know, like the identity of who we think we are is a construct that we've literally constructed it. That's kind of like the it's kind of like the clothing that the universe decides to put on while we're here in this like play that we call life for this character that we're
mm.
playing, you know? And so
Yeah,
like
pretty cool.
even me saying that I like my nicotine in my blah blah blah, you know, like that's a
That's so neat.
it's funny because that's a part of like the identity that I decided like that this character that I'm playing, Ron Carter, is gonna it's gonna be a part of this character. And then like once I decide that no, this can't be a part of this character, then I make the changes and then it's different. And and so it's funny because it's easier for me to see when other people are making decisions out of their identity than it is when I am. I think it's like that for
Mm,
most of us who are aware of this stuff. Um,
yeah.
but the cool thing that I love about even thinking about this stuff is like is that like if that's if that's true, right? Where everything in my life that I do, that I don't do, um, those are all part of my identity that I constructed. Well, that means that the life that I live, it's literally a life that I built, you know.
Absolutely.
And if I want my life to be different, then I could just build it different. Um, and
You know, that's funny you say that because whenever we teach anybody, right, what do we say? Well, visualize what you want. Start with that. Start with visualizing what you want. And then, a lot of people's like, well, I don't know what I want. And then you got to kind of help them along. Well, do you want to be fat or skinny? Well, I want to be skinny. Do you want to be rich or poor? Well, I want to be rich. So little
Yeah.
basic things, but then you break that down. Um, you
But
know,
even then, that's a good point. But even like if I'm coaching somebody, I like to like because it's one thing for some. I'd like to go a little bit deeper, even when they say, "Oh well, I want to be skinny or I want to be rich," because it's like for years I wanted to be sober, but I didn't get sober because I didn't really want to be sober. That was the right
mm,
answer, and I told it to you, and I told it to myself. But like here, like in this center of my being, did I actually really desire that? Like, no. You know, what I really desired was to not have the pain that I was already experiencing. So that's where my focus was, and I continued to get that. And and so uh if somebody says, "Well, I want to be skinny," then it's like, "Well, okay, like, but do you really though?" And then they're like, "Oh, well, yeah. Why? Like, why do you specifically want to be skinny? I mean, you could just not be skinny. Like, that's okay." So like as
yeah,
soon as you paint the other side that it's okay, if they're like, "Oh yeah, I guess you're right," it's like, okay, you don't even really want that. So like
yeah,
this makes sense why you're not getting it, you know? Um,
yeah.
yeah.
Because I put my jeans on and my button popped off and it hit my little brother right in the eye, and it took out his eye.
Yeah, but then you were able to
I,
get some bigger jeans, right? Like you had to go get some more jeans. You
yeah.
got some bigger ones.
And I stopped
What's
for
the
more ice
problem?
cream on the way.
Yeah, but the cool thing about this is like all change comes from the identity. When I change who I see myself as in the world, and not who I say that I am, but who how I see myself when no one's around, and how I think about
Mm,
myself when I'm not gonna
yeah.
talk about it to anybody, when it's just how I see myself, then I unconsciously start to behave in a way that aligns with that. And because I
Mm,
behave in a different way, life gets me different results. I'm taking different actions that lead to different results. Different results equals change. And so it's
mm,
like if I can't change how I see myself and how I view myself, it doesn't matter what I say my goal is or how much I say that I want it because if I can't change how I perceive myself, I won't take the action necessary consistently. I might take the action necessary to get to my goal for a month or for 2 weeks. This is why so many people go on diet plans. They lose weight, they join some challenge, they lose weight, and then they, after a month and a half, they're like, I did it, finish line, I hit the goal. And then they stop and then they do the old behavior because they haven't changed their
mm.
identity. They just decided
Which
that I'm
is,
going to do something
yeah.
really hard for 6 weeks. But if you change your identity, and you make the changes a part of that identity, a part of how you see yourself, then there is no finish line. There's like, no, I'm eating like this and I'm going to the gym because it's what I do. Because it's what I do.
Yeah.
And then when
So
that's your
your
mentality,
identity is it's just like so you'd say your identity is really your belief system, right?
right? I would even say that your belief system comes out of your identity. I would say that the identity is like one level deeper than the belief system because like the way that I see the world is through the lens of my identity.
Yeah, that's pretty
And
cool. So like I've heard of changing belief systems, and we've done tons of that on people. But you're taking it to another place where you're saying your identity, who you are, what you are, everything you are. So the question is, how do you change it? So, in other words, how do you do a 180 on it, right? How do you do where you could take that pleasure and pain on your identity and just flip it?
That's that's a really good question. Um, and the way that for me, the way that I've changed my identity, right? I can only speak for me, but I could also speak for what I see in other people. But like for me specifically, um, it came from I literally looked at my current identity and then I looked at what like I looked at the goal that I was trying to achieve and thought like what version of Ron, what new and improved version of Ron needs to exist to be able to handle this goal, to be able to do this like no problem. And I started mapping out the qualities and the traits of that person. And then I actively started to do those things. And so, and like one of those was the first time that I ever did this was like, well, dude, if you want to be a seven-figure business owner, you can't be doing heroin, bro. Like, and like
Yeah.
smoking a pack of cigarettes a day. Like this is delusional to think that you're going to be exactly who you are. This was years ago, and then you're going to get that
Mm.
goal. like, like no.
Yeah.
And
Because
so,
somehow you must have linked it though to somehow it's screwing up my mental ability. So that can't be part of the equation.
right. Well, it doesn't even. Here's the crazy thing about this that I I didn't even look at like, well, this is why you can't do that. It was less of a logical exercise and more of like internal knowingness. Like if I was gonna talk to myself, it'd be like, bro, like you know goddamn well that you can't be doing that to get to this. And it's just like and I can
Hmm.
just feel that like that's just truth like I know it. And this is and the crazy thing about this is of course there are some business owners who probably do heroin and smoke a pack of cigarettes a day that are at seven figures, right?
I don't
But
know, but probably.
I mean there probably is, but
Mm.
here's the thing, the path to get like the reason I say that is the changes that you need to make to your identity to get to your goal are not the same as the changes that somebody else may need to make to their identity to get to that same goal. Like it's personal.
Right, right.
And so
Yeah.
so I knew for me I needed to do that. And because I knew that, because I had that belief, it's true for me. And then I had to like start doing that stuff. And the identity, it didn't start to shift and change until I mapped out what I needed to start doing and what I needed to stop doing, both of those. And then I
Yeah,
actually
that's
started
amazing.
taking action.
Here's the
Because
amazing
once,
thing. Like this is amazing to me, right? Here you are. You're totally hooked on drugs. Heroin, alcohol, whatever. Everything. Anything and everything. And then you come up with this idea. I can't do this if I want to get here. That's like really unusual, isn't it, for someone who's addicted to drugs or alcohol or anything? Isn't it
yeah,
though? Like
yeah.
what is the like when you look at the statistics of um recoveries, right? Of recovering homes and stuff like that. The statistics are really bad that anyone ever recovers. I mean, I don't know what the exact numbers are. I think you'd probably know it better than I do.
Yeah, there, I mean, those statistics aren't good, but here's the thing because, uh, like, it's hard, it's almost impossible to measure that. And here's why,
Mm,
right? Like, and I can only speak for um, like, like 12-step programs that I've been a part of,
yeah.
but they're all anonymous, right? So because they're anonymous, nobody can go to a 12-step meeting and take a survey. You can't.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And so what people started doing, the people who made these statistics, is they started going to different recovery homes, and then taking a survey of like, okay, are you in recovery? And the requirement for being in recovery was attended one 12-step meeting. It might have been like per week or something like that. And so, like, I attended 12-step meetings like weekly for like a decade when I was still doing drugs. And like, and it's like, so it's the percentage of people who attended a meeting to like actually like got and stayed sober. And
Mm.
the none of the work that actually kept me sober happened at the meeting. It's funny because like uh the this whole identity based change thing that I've been talking about, I didn't learn this from like the 12 steps. I learned this in a mindset program that I was going through. And but I started working the 12 steps to get sober after I'd gone through that mindset program. So I had an understanding of mindset and identity based change already when I went into that. And I can see how doing, when I was actually doing those steps, like doing the work that you don't see people doing in meetings, because like you don't go to a meeting and then make amends with your family while you're at the meeting. Like that's outside of the meeting work, you know. And so
Mm.
that's what I
Yep.
mean when I say that just going to a meeting isn't the answer, right? That's where you go to find out what the solution is. If you decide to take that route, it's not the only way for somebody to get sober, of course. um, but but what I notice is that the principles behind those steps, what they do is they create an identity based change. That's what they do.
Mm.
When I worked through those and started living my life a different way, like all of the old ideas that I had about myself and who I am disintegrated. And I had new ideas and new beliefs about who I am and the kind of person that I am. And then I had action that I had taken to back up those beliefs. Like when I went and I made amends to like family and friends, and I used to steal from
Mm.
stores all the time. I went to the different stores, like stores that I stole alcohol from as like a teenager, right? I went there 20 years later with like $30 and said, "Hey, this is what I did. It was 20 years ago. Like I
No
took this
way.
from
You did
here."
that? You one of
Yeah,
those
I
guys?
got the messenger, or I got the manager at the store, and I told them
Wow.
my thing, and I said, "I'm living my life a different way now. So I want to give this to you because it's not mine, it's yours." You know, and then I held out my money for them. They're really their money, right?
Yeah.
Um,
So,
and
Ron,
uh,
what did you do when they whacked you for interest?
Most of them didn't even take it.
Yeah, I
And
believe it.
and the people that did take it said, "We're gonna put this in this charity fund that we have." But the whole point is, like,
Yeah.
I did this stuff, and not only it's one thing to say, like, "Oh, I'm different because I try to help people and I don't take anything from anybody." If you have these affirmations basically they don't do anything if you don't have evidence to point to. You're not going to change your identity if you can't say, "This is true about me because I did this," you
Hmm.
know? And so, but after I started doing all that stuff, then I'm like, I can see how I'm like, I'm not a selfish person. I'm not like this piece of shit. I try to help everybody around me, and and I'm totally different than who I was before when I felt like I needed drugs and alcohol. And it's like if somebody said, "Well, prove it," I'd be like, "Well, remember when I went to all these different stores and I gave them all their money back? Remember when nobody nobody required an apology from me, but I went and found them and told them about all the things that I did wrong without pointing at any of their faults, and then asked if there's anything that I could do to make it right." And then when they told me what it was I could do, I actually did it,
Hmm.
even if I disagreed with it. Like, yeah, that's how I know. And so, like, my identity is
Oh,
like, yeah, you're a different dude for sure. And then now I take actions in a different way than I ever did, and then the results in life are different. So that's just like one example of how this works, right? That's how I went from sleeping on an air mattress in my brother's uh, spare bedroom air mattress and a broken sleeping bag, um, on my brother's in my brother's spare bedroom, to like a little bit over 3 years later, and living in this amazing place with an awesome girlfriend, two pets, like completely different life. Like I didn't have any material possessions then. Like, I had my laptop and like a bag of clothes, and and
Yeah.
and like that's how life is totally different because I changed my identity. I didn't
Yeah, yeah.
change the
Let
actions.
let me ask you something on that, Ron. When you were, let's say, banged up pretty bad, were you grateful for anything at the time?
Nope.
Nothing. And now you have all this gratitude.
The funny thing is, back then, all I could see was problems. Uh, Here's a great way to put it. Back then, I had a problem for every solution.
You did in your own
I
mind.
did. I
Yeah.
had a problem for every single solution that you could try to share with me. And now it's the
Oh my
opposite.
God.
And
Yeah.
and now I look back at all these things that I thought were problems, and I'm like, these were blessings. I'm so glad they happened. The thing that happened didn't change. The only thing that changed is how I look at it. And just tying this back to what I was mentioning like 10 minutes ago, how I look at it changed because my identity changed. And my identity is like the lens that I view life through. So my identity changed, and I look back at this same situation and I see something completely different. And now I'm like, I'm
Mm,
grateful for it. I'm so glad that that happened, you know?
yeah. So, like, I like to just understand things really good. So, because that way, in case this ever comes up, trying to help someone or whatever. But
Hmm.
your identity. So all of a sudden, your thought of who you were changed, right? Do you think that's accurate? Like all of a sudden, okay, so all of a sudden you had a different thought of who you were.
Exactly. That's
Yeah.
exactly it.
So, the question is like when you're like, and I'm not going to say I have a relative that's really struggling with drugs, really, it, unfortunately. So to communicate with him, I would have to say something like, he needs to change his thought. But like you said, he thinks he's always right, no matter what you say. No, no, me and my little friend are going to get it done. Trust me, I need my medicine.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's really like, I don't know. It's really challenging. It's a real serious subject. I like to kid around and stuff all the time. That's just who I am.
Right.
Like I was gonna
Yeah.
say, hey Ron, we should come up with a 10-step program. Cut 2 steps right out of it, right? But serious, right? It is a serious problem in this country, and it hits every. Listen, it doesn't matter if the parents are wealthy, if they're poor, if whatever race you are. It doesn't even matter. It's a problem across the whole country. And how do you change? Like, I get it, okay. So your identity, and then all of a sudden you changed your identity through a thought, like you said, wait, I can't be this way anymore. Like how is it, like, is it just luck, you think? Or do you think creator spirit just, I'm gonna shoot down Ron Carter because he's gonna help a lot of other people in the future? Because I know you have.
Yeah.
What do you
That's
how do you think that all came about? It's so crazy to me.
that's a good question, and like I'm not going to BS you or anybody who may be watching this, because here's the real answer. I don't freaking know.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I know, and it'd be so
um
cool if we could just figure that out, because then
and
we could say, hey.
Here's the thing that I do know. I do know that anybody who tried to get me to change before I did, they got pushed away further than I can push anyone away.
Mm-hmm.
That did not it did not it didn't take. It's like so the one thing that I do know is that and this applies to just all real long-term change. Real long-term change, it cannot and will not happen unless I actually desire it.
Mm.
Like I'm not going to change my identity if I don't really want that thing, whatever it is. Like that's why we were talking about like weight loss and stuff in the beginning of this. And you're like, "Hey, do you want to be fat or you want to be skinny?" And someone's like, "Oh, be skinny." Like that's why I follow that up with other questions. Like, "Yeah, but do you really though? Why do you want to?" Because I'm when I'm asking
Mm.
those questions, I'm just digging to see if you actually really want this or if you're just giving me the right answer. Because if you don't want it, like there's no reason for me to like give you the formulas for and tell you how to change your identity and because you're not going to do it if you don't want it. And it's the same thing that I
Yeah,
do
yeah.
with guys at meetings who ask me to sponsor them. We go have a coffee, I meet up, I get their story, I tell them part of my story, and then I'm like, "Hey, dude, like, is this something that you like really want to do?" I mean, because it's okay if it's not. Like, I mean, we could still be friends. I'll take you to meetings and stuff, but like, and but what I mean when I'm asking them that, I'm trying to assess whether they're even ready for me to like show them all the steps that I took so that they can do the same, and for me to walk them through that process. Because if they're
Because you're
not,
like
it's like,
unless you decided already, I don't want to waste anyone's time. Is that accurate?
yeah, pretty much. Well, I would say like I know how me and you think of the word decision,
Mm.
right? But for anybody watching this, because they may not think of it like this, it's like when you say decide, Brian, you mean like get to the point where there is literally no other option,
Yep, that's exactly right. To cut off anything else.
right?
Yep.
And to even make a decision, to even do that, there has to be desire first, right? And so it's like you have to desire that outcome, and then you could decide to like only travel down that path. And and so like that's all I'm really looking for. And so it's like you can't really go through that process if you don't even have the desire. If you're totally content where you are, even though the whole world can have the desire for you, it's the same with addiction,
Hmm.
and alcoholism, where it's like if you don't have the desire to change, you may want to change, but if you don't like have the desire and the willingness, like the willingness to cut all other options off, the
Yeah.
willingness to say like, "Hey, maybe I can't manage this," and just like I used to think that I could do heroin on Fridays. Like, I would tell myself this. I'd be like, "I just do my heroin on like Fridays, like a regular person," even though it sounds crazy. But
Yeah.
to me, I believe that like regular people just do heroin on Fridays sometimes. It's like no, they just
Just
don't
shoot up
do
once a
that.
week. Once a week.
They don't do
You
that at
know.
all,
That's
bro.
yeah.
But I believe that, right? It wasn't until I like cut off all of
Mm.
these all of these other pathways. Maybe I'll manage it. Maybe I'll just do it like this and like this and like this and was willing to be like, I don't know what to do. I'm going to do everything that somebody who's been in my spot is recommending me to do. Somebody who's been where I'm at, but they're not anymore. They're going to tell me what they did and I'm just going to do that. And I had
Mm.
exhausted all other options, but I had to decide that.
Yeah, you're like, I'm going to get rid of the thing that's controlling me,
Yeah.
right? To a point, I guess.
Yeah. But it's the same process for all change, even like
Yeah,
growing a
all
business,
of it.
um,
Every single
becoming
part of it.
healthier.
It's all the same. It's just, when you're like doing the extremes, right? Like you're doing drugs, that shows up in your life. It just does. There's no avoiding it. Someone can hide it for maybe a few years, but it's going to come out.
Yeah, there's a phrase that um whatever's in the dark will always come out to the light.
Hmm.
And I heard this first from one of my previous mentors, Sam Ovens, and it was in one of his training courses, and he was talking about when he was saying it, he was talking about like there's no right or wrong way to live. First and foremost, there's just whatever way you decide, and that like somebody might live in California like I do, live next to the beach, and want to just go surfing all day every day, and uh, and they don't even work. They just want to go surfing all day every day, and then they might look at somebody who lives in New York and works on the stock exchange, spends all their time working, but they're making buttloads of money. And the surfer guy is going to look at the New York stock exchange guy and be like, "You're doing things wrong. Like you need to do things like this and have more leisure time and be on the beach." And and vice versa, right? But the thing is, the only way to actually get it wrong is to choose one side. And that's because the surfer guy may surf all day, every day, not work, and be totally enjoying the shit out of it, loving it, and then get to the point where now, because he hasn't worked in 6 months and has just been like chasing all the swells, like he needs to go get a job because like he can't
Yeah.
pay for anything to live, and he needs to work overtime to pay all these debts and credit card debts, and now he can't surf at all because now he just has to work for a long time. And then the
Yeah.
stock exchange person spends so much time at work that now he needs to go fly to like an island and take a vacation for a month and turn off all of his devices and just lay out on the beach. It's so whatever's in the dark will always come to the light. It's like if you don't take care of yourself and go to the gym and eat healthy, if you don't take off time to have your physical body be healthy, then your physical illness will force you to take time off in the future. You know, um,
Yeah. I
I don't know if
mean,
that makes sense.
I like, to me, life's about balance. Okay. That to me is success, right? You're making enough money. You're still going out with your friends. You're still having fun, having laughs, doing what you love doing, right? Balance. It's all about balance. You know, I think there's people who do extremes in every single avenue you can think of. If you look at Steve Jobs, right? Complete workaholic, built this huge business, um, and did really great. Until he came to his death, he said, "Wow, what just happened?" Right? Like the rest of us. But I think there's other people who maybe play too hard, maybe do drugs too hard. It's all those extremes. That's why I like being in balance. For me, it
Right,
works.
right.
Doesn't work for everyone. It doesn't matter. I'm not here to judge anyone, but think starting to know you better and better, I think you do as well. You take time for your girlfriend, you take time for surfing, you take time for your dog, as a matter of fact,
Yeah,
you know?
yeah. And it's not always easy for me to do for my current identity right now. That doesn't come as second nature because I've always been somebody who takes things to extremes. Hence the alcohol and drug abuse past, right? Um, and so it's really something that I'm learning right now is that like, hey, the business doesn't have to grow at some super crazy rate It doesn't have to. Like, who said that it does? Like, and also, um, like, I don't need to. It, even if I wanted it to grow at that rate, me spending all of my time on it and ignoring other areas of my life, doesn't mean that it's going to move faster. It actually could like hinder the business growth because then I burn myself out and then I need to take a bunch of time off or I need to quit for a couple months and regroup. Um, and uh, and so like one thing about balance that I've also learned too is that sometimes there are seasons where we have to like push a little bit, right? Balance. I've learned myself that it doesn't always look like the exact same amount of time allotted to these different areas every day. Sometimes it's like for this month period, you know, I'm actually spending a little bit less time with the girlfriend because these things are going on. Like right now, I'm in school and finals a week is next week, and I got a bunch of projects, and so I got to do this stuff, and I'm doing them like late at night, and not every night, but more than usual. But then once those are done, like it's summer break, and I'm still taking
Mm,
classes for summer break, but I'm not taking four at a time.
yeah.
And now it's like the balance has shifted and time has opened up. So it's like over a period of time, there's a balance. There's a yin and a yang, you know. But if it's all yang or all yin over a period of time, then that's gonna be no good.
Mm. Well, again, right? It's how we're programmed, right? How we are, how some people are living their life. So,
Right.
in other words, when they see commercials of the guy making big money, getting the hot chicks, and driving the sports car, and it's just what they're selling us, right? It's just a way of selling. I think you have to go deep and to figure out what you really want in life, right? And there's the question: what do you really want in life? You know, I I'll tell you. I want to read this little story to you. We got time? What time is it? Do you have to? You got a couple minutes, Ron?
Yeah, I got a few more
Couple
minutes.
more, if you don't mind. How much is enough? The author is unknown. Okay. The American investment banker was at the pier of a small coastal Mexican village when a small boat with just one fisherman docked. Inside the small boat were several large fin tuna. The American complimented the Mexican on the quality of his fish and asked how long it took to catch them. The Mexican replied, "Only a little while." The American then asked, "Why didn't he stay out longer to catch more fish?" The Mexican said he had enough to support his family's immediate needs. The American then asked, "But what do you do with the rest of your time?" And the Mexican fisherman said, "I sleep late, I fish a little, I play with my children, take a siesta with my wife, Maria, stroll to the village each evening where I sip wine and play guitar with my amigos. I have a full and busy life." The American scoffed. "I'm a Harvard MBA and could help you. You should spend more time fishing and with the proceeds buy a bigger boat. And with the proceeds of a bigger boat, you could buy several boats. Eventually, you would have a fleet of fishing boats. Instead of selling your catch to a middleman, you would sell directly to the processor, eventually opening your own cannery. You would control the product, processing the distribution. You would need to leave the small coastal village and move to Mexico City, then LA, and eventually New York City, where you will run your expanding enterprise." The Mexican fisherman asked, But how long will this take? To which the American replied, 15 to 20 years. But but what then? The American laughed and said, that's the best part. When the time is right, you would announce an IPO and sell your company stock to the public and become very rich. You would make millions. The American said, then you would retire, move to a small coastal fishing village where you would sleep late, fish a little, play with your kids, take a siesta with your wife, stroll to the village in the evening, sip wine, and play guitar with your amigos.
Yeah,
How's that?
yeah. It's funny. I've heard that one before, but that's a good story because as soon as you started reading it, I was like, oh yeah, okay, I know this. I mean,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
it's like it encapsulates like the very essence of what of like this. It's almost like a trap that we kind of get stuck in when
Mm,
it comes to wanting to achieve a goal. Like this goes back to the beginning of the podcast. Like, how do you achieve the goal that you want to achieve?
yeah.
And it's like, you know, when I first started any online business stuff, the goal was my first goal was not to work at this crappy job that I had at the hospital that I worked at and to like I was single at the time. I thought that if I just had more money that I'd meet like a really good spouse or a good partner that would be cool and then like I could have a better life and in business was how I was going to get there. And not just business but successful at it. And the funny thing is like now all those things that I initially wanted, I have and I didn't get them from the business. Like I got them from like growing myself personally. And so now it's like, okay, like but now the goal is not like to just have those things. It's like, okay, well let's just help other people because I like it. It makes me feel good. It's part of my identity.
Mm,
And but also like that also takes all this pressure off because I don't need to help a million people right now. It's like I mean I just try to help somebody today in some way, shape, or form, and I do the things I like to do. And just like how that guy fishes and plays the guitar and it
mm.
just so happens that the stuff that I like to do leads to business growth and like YouTube stuff and like but I do it because I like to do it. If I didn't like to, I wouldn't because I don't have
You
to.
know what I've learned, Ron, is ask better questions, right? So I used to ask, well, how can I just make a lot of money? Okay, great. But like a better question for me now that I've learned, right? How can I have fun in the process of making money? And
Right,
that's a whole different thing. You know what I mean? It doesn't always have to be just drive yourself and it's just there's so many different things and different questions you can ask yourself and your mind always comes up with the answer.
right.
It always does. Hey, how can we have fun, while wiring this hotel? Well, nothing can be fun. Oh, really? Really? But, the truth of it is when you break it down, okay, let's, let's have break at 10 o'clock. Let's have lunch at 12. And then all the crews get together. And man, I'll tell you, that's some funny stuff that comes up in those breaks. Um, but it's just, you enjoy those moments, right?
Yeah, I
So,
think the thing that that story really makes me think of, and like even you saying ask better questions, is like it's like really digging into like the why, like asking yourself why. Like when you have an idea to do something, well, why? Why do I want that? What
yeah,
will getting that like even do for me? Why would it do that for me?
yeah.
And,
that's so true too. The
and then
great thing about that is it gives you a certain point. Like, why? Well, it's the freedom. It's this, it's that, right?
right. And the thing about it is like asking ourselves for me, asking myself these kind of questions helps me actually achieve that goal because
Mm,
when I want to achieve a goal because I feel like it will give me something that's missing in my life, something that feels like it's missing, not actually is, but it feels like it's missing.
mm,
Then what and then I start taking all this action to get this thing that I think is already it's not even there. It's what ends up happening is I end up creating more of this experience of lack. Like if I'm creating a business because I want to attract a good partner, right? Well, the reason why I feel like I have to create a business to attract a good partner is because I think that there's no good partners around me, and I have to like do this other thing to make the good partners appear. It's like I
mm.
think that they're not around me. I'm experiencing some lack there, and then I take action, and then I feel like that lack has grown, right? And so the um, thing that I've really realized is that asking those questions helps me to become aware of what I think is missing and what I'm wrong about because those things like there's no lack. And the cool thing about
Wow.
this is um when I get to that point where I can see that well that's ridiculous. I'm not really lacking anything. Even when I thought I was lacking money, I'm like I don't have enough money. It's like, well, what is enough? Just like the story, right? What is enough money? Have you had enough to stay alive your whole life?
Y-
Oh, you're alive
Yeah.
right now,
It
so you have. So that's like the definition of enough, right? you know?
exactly.
And then I can start to
Exactly.
become grateful for that. Grateful that I've had enough to sustain myself and live so far. And the things I've become grateful for are the things that expand.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. Um, I know, I know that you said a quote, I think it was on our last podcast from one of your other mentors, I believe. And it's like it's not um it was something like it's not abundance that you're lacking, it's your awareness of abundance that you're
Yeah.
lacking.
It's uh it's yeah, you're not lacking abundance. You're lacking the awareness of the abundance you have.
Right.
Yeah.
That's
My
friggin' powerful. That's a cool statement.
yeah.
Right on.
All right. I think that's a good stopping point, don't you?
Yeah. I
Good way
think
to wrap it up.
to recap, ask yourself better questions. You're going to get the answers. You always do. And keep digging. Ask question after question, you know. Look at Ron, he did it.
Absolutely. If I can do it, anyone can. It's funny. I think of this all the time when it comes to business when people are like on my YouTube channel and stuff, or like in like my Facebook group and all that. And they're like asking me questions. They're like, "Oh, thank you. I can't believe you know all this stuff." And I'm like, I'm thinking about who I was like just a few years ago, and these people they never met that Ron. This is one cool way where you know that you really shifted identities correctly because
Yeah.
when you start to perceive yourself different and then you act different, well, then other people perceive you as different. And this is also one of the reasons why anybody who like becomes really successful, the people who knew them before are always like, "Oh, you changed. You changed." It's like, well, you have if you want to have different results in life, you have to. You can't stay
Yeah.
exactly the same and then
Yeah.
have everything change. It's not how it works. But the people who say that don't understand that, and that's okay. Um, but
Mm.
I have people like thanking me for like advice and I'm just like, or they're telling me about why it's hard for them and why they can't do it. And I'm thinking like, I'm looking at their situation and I'm looking at how like I would have killed to be starting off where they're starting off as opposed to where I started, because it's like I had a hole I had to dig myself out of before I could even start making any real forward progress. you know and
Yeah.
so
Absolutely.
I just say that to say like, hey, if you want to achieve something great and you feel like you're a little bit behind, like, look, if I can start doing this stuff, like you can too. Like if I can go from being on the street and being on drugs to like doing this podcast here with you and like living a life that I actually love to live and like all the different parts inside of it, like you can too. Like anybody can do this stuff regardless of where you're starting out at. You could change and make your life better and make your life more fulfilled, whatever that may look like for you. Doesn't even have to include business stuff.
Yeah.
And that's it.
Just
That's my
life
that's
in
my pitch
general.
and my motivation statement.
Love it, Ron. It was great as always.
All right, Brian. Great talking with you. Love doing this with you. And
Right on.
we'll see you guys in the next one.
All right. Good timing, Ron.
See ya.
See you, buddy.